Anyone who's invested in top quality pruning tools likely cleans them and maintains them regularly. However, the question arises, should you clean them every day or even several times a day? While most agree that such a routine is not very cost effective, evidence suggests that measures that can reduce the transmission of certain plant diseases to healthy plants. So examples would be, for example, if I was going into the hospital for an operation and they said, well, we'll give you a discount if you'll allow us to use our scalpels that have been cleaned with Lysol. What do you think? Would you go have that operation? Or if they said, well, we'll clean them with Clorox, would you have that operation? What if the guy before you was dying of some horrific disease and they cut him and then they bring the tools in that have been cleaned with Lysol? Nope, that's not what we would want. I wouldn't. So it's interesting that there hasn't been a huge amount of research on this in terms of landscape maintenance. There has been quite a bit on the ag side. So I want to talk about how and when and why you would sterilize your tools and what's the best way to do that. If it really depends on your crop and the pathogen that you're dealing with. So, for example, if I'm dealing with fire blight or Winnia, research going back to 1906 has linked the transmission of fire blight in nurseries to contaminated pruning tools. So I absolutely would want to sterilize my tools if I'm doing anything in the Rosaceae family, which is highly susceptible to fire blight. At one time, my company was managing a property with well over 400 roses, and pruning those roses in the springtime, late winter, spring, was always a large production. And did we sterilize? Yes, absolutely sterilized our tools between each rose. So we prune a rose, sterilize the tools, and we'll talk about how we did that in just a minute. So certain pathogens demand that you sterilize the tools. So diseases such as fire blight, verticillium wilt is another one on maple trees. If you're dealing with plants with viruses or viroids, that you certainly can transmit certain viral pathogens, including citrus, exocortis, and latent mosaic viroid on peaches. So you would absolutely want to use some kind of a disinfectant on your tools. So what is the best disinfectant? Well, people disagree on this. There are those who say ethanol or isopropyl alcohol is adequate. It was recommended in a horticultural abstract in 1986, and then in 1989, that same publication says, no, not adequate. How about chlorine treatments using Clorox? Clorox is effective. In 1986, in that horticultural abstract article, they said that Clorox was adequate. The problem with that is that Clorox is corrosive, and you're taking your expensive tools and subjecting them to a corrosive substance which is going to cause them to decline. So would I use Clorox? Absolutely not. And you're going to see in the literature that they're going to take the Clorox and mix it with 9 parts of water, which dilutes it, but it's still a corrosive. What about trisodium phosphate, 10% solution? There are some that recommend that. What about Lysol? Well, Lysol was one of the least effective, but on the other hand, it was the least corrosive. So Lysol wipes are not the answer. What is the answer, Frank? Alcohol dips and flaming. So my company would buy MAP gas, the same stuff you would use for soldering copper pipe, and we would sterilize using MAP gas. About 10 seconds under the flame will definitely clean just about anything, any pathogen on your pruning tools. Think about the hospital. What do? They use heat to sterilize their tools. So why not give the same courtesy to our plants? So in conclusion, do I disinfect or not? Well, if I'm dealing with viruses or viroids on my plants, I definitely disinfect. If I'm dealing with vascular fungi or bacteria, I absolutely disinfect. If I have oozing cankers, I would need to avoid cutting those while they're active and wait till they're dry. If I'm pruning irreplaceable plants, disinfect your tools. And try the MAP gas. That's the easiest and most effective in my opinion. Thanks for your time. I hope you learned something in this video.